have been waiting to do this video for so long. I'm so excited to share it with you guys. So today we're talking about Pretty Little Liars, one of the most iconic teen drama mystery shows. I want to talk about the good and the bad. That includes a season by season overview, the biggest problems with the show that people haven't necessarily talked about, that horrendous finale that literally traumatized me, and why it was so bad, like where they went wrong. I could not give a bigger spoiler warning. There will be so many spoilers throughout this video. This TV show follows a group of friends whose main leader of their pack goes missing. Her name's Allison. Then these four friends start receiving threatening texts from someone who calls themselves A. So the girls are wondering if this is their supposedly dead friend Allison. In terms of the four girls, one of them, my favorite, is called Spencer, and she's hardworking, she's witty. And next you have Emily, who's a swimmer, and she's very sweet, but she's kind of known as the boring one because her story was the most neglected and the least invested in. Aria is the artsy one who follows her heart, but at times she can be very selfish. And the last one, Hannah, loves shopping and design. Her personality was the one that was the most butchered by the writers because she went from the most loved character in the show to one of the most disliked by the end. I'm just going to talk about the relationships in general. So we'll start off with Allison and Emily. Following Emily as she realizes that she's gay is really interesting and also important, I think, because we need that representation. But in the end, she ends up marrying Allison, and it wasn't necessarily executed the best because Allison starts out being really mean to everyone. And she's very manipulative because she knows that Emily has feelings for her and sort of uses it against her. But now I look back on the redemption arc and Allison's development, I'm not sure that it's the best pairing. Not because they're a bad couple, but because I feel like Allison would have been better off either dead, like permanently dead, or as Uber A. If she did have a redemption arc, it needed to be done better because I feel like there were some gaps that always rubbed me the wrong way. Like when she was with Emily in the later seasons, she became this boring, lame character who was almost codependent on her friends and became more of a liability and an inconvenience than an asset. But also it's the way that she gets together with Emily that annoys me because out of all the relationships, it feels the most neglected. Like with all the other characters, you see them properly date, you see them fall in love. But with Allison and Emily, it's like unrequited love. Then in season 5, it turns out Allison's not dead and Allison comes back, and you're kind of excited for what could be a really good romance. And then stuff goes wrong, the girls start distrusting Allison, and that whole relationship and yearning and romantic tension between Allison and Emily just dies until like season 7, and that's when it really starts to kick off again. But by that point, the tensions just dropped off. It felt too little too late. It also seems so wrong that Allison being forcibly impregnated with Emily's eggs is what ended up pushing them together to spend alone time together and to have screen time, which I think is so messed up that they needed to go through something that traumatic in order just to get their characters to flirt and talk and bond again. Now, in terms of Spencer, I liked Spencer's relationship with Alex a lot, and you meet him in the earlier seasons. Then when they break up, he just disappears off the show and he's never really spoken about again. And that's one of the biggest pet peeves that I have with this show, is that they'll bring characters on and it's so hard to rewatch the show and actually enjoy it because you know that character won't even mean anything or have any significance whatsoever. And Toby is Spencer's main love interest, and I did really like them. In terms of Aria, this is the one I was the most excited to talk about because I feel like there's such a big debate. She meets Ezra Fitz in a bar, and he turns out to be her English teacher, particularly because the target audience is like teenagers. That never sat right with me. They even get married at the end, so there's not a bigger way to romanticize it than that. Their conversations became so repetitive. I love you, I don't love you, we can do this, we can't do this. If you want to give their relationship that edge or add some conflict or have the whole forbidden love aspect, I get it, because it is a TV show, you need to have it dramatic and juicy, but I think there were ways to do that could have been a bit less creepy and a bit less uncomfortable to watch. For instance, maybe make him her external music teacher. That's a bit less creepy, I think, than her being in a classroom with him as her teacher. Or maybe her parents don't want her dating someone who's there to tutor her or help her with her homework, so she feels like she can't tell them about it. Maybe have him be 18, her be 16, and have him come in as a teacher's assistant to teach in schools. He's not actually her teacher, he's just sort of there in the classroom learning. Undeniably, they have a lot of chemistry and I liked their scenes together, but Aria is too quick to not communicate with Ezra about certain things, and this happens like multiple times and it's really annoying. Like, she'll find money in his apartment, she'll worry like, why does he have money stuffed in this drawer, and she'll run out rather than just talking to him. She'll go and talk to her friends first or think about it and then go and talk to him, which made it seem like she didn't trust him, considering their relationship is already creepy. If it seems like she's scared of him and she doesn't want to talk to him about stuff, that makes me wonder why they're in a relationship in the first place. Or when she finds a photo of him and Jackie's wearing what looks like an engagement ring, rather than Aria staying and talking to him, again, she rushes out of his apartment. The amount of times they argued and broke up was completely ridiculous. And at first, I kind of liked it because it was interesting, but honestly, by the end of season 1, I was done. I was like, I cannot have another scene of these two bickering and getting back together. So first it's her saying, I want to make this work even though you're my teacher, and him saying, no, I'm your teacher, I can't. And then they get back together, then they're fighting over the school play, then they get back together, then they're fighting at the school dance, and then they're back and forth about his ex-girlfriend, and then they're back and forth about his ex-fiance, and then it's him implying that she's immature with the way that she's handling her parents' divorce, and Aria gets really reactive, and there's another argument there. And even if they weren't breaking up, there was just too much tension and arguments for me to really enjoy a lot of their scenes together. Then they're fighting about A, and then they're fighting about Noel trying to blackmail Ezra, and then they're broken up after the parents find out about their relationship. But it's okay, they decide they need to make it work anyway, so they go and kiss in the rain. But then he breaks up with her in the car, and he's an absolute moron, and he gets out of the car and drives away and doesn't even like pat her on the back or something. But then, even though they've just broken up effectively and no explanation, suddenly she's sitting in his apartment eating takeaway or something as if nothing's happened. Like a few hours later, halfway through season 4, she realizes he is an absolute creep and he was only dating her because he wanted to write a book about Alison's disappearance. So he knew who she was before they met. I like that she stood her ground and actually broke up with him and trashed his apartment and acted angry as you would, particularly when you find out that he also had a thing with Alison, who was even younger than 16 at the time. Understandably, he didn't know how old she was, but still, it's so messed up because it makes it seem like he's got this thing for younger girls. I don't know, it didn't feel like it was an authentic part of his character. It felt like the writers were looking for drama, so they just sort of threw it in. They get together after the time jump, so she's in her 20s, and that's the only time I could really enjoy their relationship because I felt like they were both more mature. In terms of Hannah, I always loved her relationship with Caleb. I adored them together. Now I'm just going to talk about general weird things about the show that sometimes people have talked about, other times I feel like they don't. So the first thing I want to say, which I think is pretty acknowledged, is that there is so much filler and waffle in terms of actual important information and progression. You're given little bits, enough to keep you watching. Each episode, all of the 4 girls get up to a different activity or have a different storyline or thing going on. But the problem is that sometimes it would be like 2 of the girls had a really good storyline, but then the other 2 would have a storyline that either was pointless and didn't mean anything, or it was just boring. Like those scenes where Emily is left notes in her cereal, or A puts bees in Ella's car. I also felt like they needed to make a decision if they're university students, adults, or 16-year-olds. I felt like the show wanted to have their cake and eat it too, and they wanted to have like the glamour of being an adult, but the restriction at the same time of being a child and the drama of having a whole storyline set in high school. They don't know to report this stalker. They're too young to understand how to do that and they're scared. I feel like they should have been in university or something because, first of all, the actresses are in their 20s, so no one looks like that when they're 16. Like, they have such good skin skin and they dress in such expensive clothes. But also it's just weird to watch because Hannah will say wise things like, if you love someone, Aria, we'll support you, and if two people are meant to be together, they'll make it work, because she looks like she's in her 20s. But if the actress was like 15 and said those things, I think it would be quite comical and hard to take seriously, because you as an audience member would be like, what do you know? And it just has that almost surreal weirdness about it, because the girls will look like they're in their 20s, dressed in these nice clothes with their makeup done, and they'll be sat in like a restaurant or in a cafe or a bar. I know they need drama, but geez, when you actually look at it, there's a real recurring pattern of inappropriate relationships. So you have Jenna and Toby's disgusting relationship that was never addressed properly. You have Ezra and Aria, which is obviously an age gap relationship, and he's her teacher. Then you have Wilden and Allison. They had a thing, and he's a police officer, way older than Allison. Ezra having a thing with Allison. So again, I know she was lying, but still. You know that Aria kisses Ezra's brother and never tells him about it, and that is just messed up. CeCe trying to get close to her family, so she dates Jason for a bit, and it doesn't get physical, she says, but he's her brother. Why the writers felt like they needed to include that is beyond me. Then you have Emily's first boyfriend trying to force himself on her. Then you have Spencer dating her sister's boyfriend, Ren. You have a lot of cheating in the show in general. Ren pursues Hannah and wants to have a relationship with her, even though Hannah is Spencer's best friend and Ren's dated Spencer. Then you have Spencer's twin sister, Alex, hooking up with Toby, who's Spencer's main love interest, without Toby realizing that he's hooking up with Spencer's twin and not actually Spencer. Ella's new boyfriend, Zach, hitting on Hannah and being creepy, harassing her. There were so many unnecessary hookups, and then a lot of those people involved in the hookups would just disappear from the show and never come back, so it felt like a huge waste of time. They had in mind that a certain couple were meant to be soulmates, particularly Aria and Ezra. You can tell were the show's favorites, so it felt like sometimes, even though Aria would explore things with other guys, they never really tried to make those romances good. It felt like they were intentionally having them a bit dry to make her and Ezra look extra good together. Samara and Emily definitely should have lasted, but it felt like the writers really liked Paige and Emily and Allison and Emily, so they were just never really giving Samara and Emily a chance, and I felt like that relationship could have been so good. Emily had so many trashy relationships that they wasted so much time on that just weren't good. She had too many love interests coming in left and right. There are also, I'm not going to get into them, but there are a lot of plot holes in this show. I'll just quickly skim through them, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this because it's frustrating and there are no answers. So, do Allison and Emily know that Ren is the father of their children? I don't think we saw that scene happen where they were told. How did the mums get out of the basement? Why on earth did Mona and Mike stop being a thing? What did Noel have against the LIARS anyway? He could have been really good with Aria. In the flashback to Toby's mum's death, she's pushed off the roof by Bethany Young, who was 12 years old at that time. That was in the past. It was stated before that Wilden was paid off to cover up Toby's mum's death, so when he was of a similar age to Charlotte, so he would have been like 12, so he would have been a child cop. That doesn't make any sense, so that's a timeline issue, and there are a lot of timeline issues in this show as well. We know at the end that Mona is keeping Alex and Mary in her dollhouse in Paris after her police officer or fake police officer boyfriend took them away, so she's kidnapped them, and I don't think anyone knows about it. But surely, like, the girls would have gone to the police station and said, hey, how's it going? We know that you took Alex and Mary away. And the police officers would have said, no, like, what do you mean? We never got a 911 call. We don't have anyone called Alex. I don't understand that. Also, why did Alex, Spencer's twin, like Aria so much and stroke her hair and say, we're going to be the closest of all? Now we'll do a season by season breakdown, and then we'll talk about the AD reveal and some other stuff. Season 1 and 2 are like the golden era of the show. Even season 3 actually I feel like is really amazing. Everyone was acting as if it suddenly got bad in the final part of season 7, and it had been great throughout. I think there were signs even in like episode 1 of season 1 that the writers weren't fully confident in what they were doing. So even in season 1 there were a few things that just were lazy, honestly. Like any scene between Ezra and Ella where Ella is admiring of him, almost unrealistically so. She's going on about how amazing he is, how well he handled that mean dad coming into the school, how handsome he is, how good he is with the kids, how he's an exceptional teacher, and it feels a bit over the top and like the writers are trying to rub it in. Ella opens up about her divorce and starts almost crying, which again, you just wouldn't do because she barely knew Ezra at that point. And also it's unprofessional, like it's so weird. And then she says, I'm so glad you're in Aria's life, which was so forced and cringy, and no one would say that. In the beginning of season 2, Aria at moments gets so bitchy with Ezra. He says, come over Aria, come to my apartment. She's like, oh, I don't know if I can. Oh, okay. Again, if you look at seasons 1 and 2 and 3, the signs were there. Like Emily's terrible love life being used as a replacer and a filler for actual plot. And Paige and Emily are genuinely toxic in the beginning and just a bad couple throughout the whole show. So Paige is introduced as a fellow competitor and rival in Emily's swimming classes. She's jealous that Emily is better than her, so she makes a subtly homophobic comment. She intimidates her and dunks her head under the water to scare her. They have so many moments where Paige is brought in as if she's important. It's like, are you crazy? Have you not been hearing the fans complaining throughout all the seasons saying, I don't like Paige, she's boring, I'm not into it? Like, you need to listen to feedback. If people are saying that, they're saying it for a reason. I cannot emphasize enough how quickly they gave up on Emily and Samara as a couple. I feel like they could have had something really nice and really genuine. Samara to me was so cute, but again, it felt like the writers for some reason weren't giving it a chance, or the directors weren't, someone wasn't. And killing Maya off is like, why? Especially because we don't have many people of color on the show. They were either made into villains, or they were killed, or they just weren't really relevant to the plot. Season 2 was really good, even though I'm picking out the worst parts of it. Season 3 takes place 5 months following the discovery that Mona was the elusive A. The thing is, the writers tried to shock us, and I feel like Ezra's kid was one of those things where the writers were trying to be like, ha, didn't expect that, did you? He's got a kid. That's right. Aria invests all this time in Ezra's kid, getting to know him. You see Ezra struggling with it, but then you find out that Malcolm isn't even Ezra's kid. So first of all, it's pointless because you won't be seeing the kid anymore, so you won't even have like any progression from that. Ezra and Aria go back to being the exact same way that they were before, and it's like, what was the point of that then? It didn't even do anything. In season 4, I still really loved it, like I love all of Pretty Little Liars, but it was obvious there was a decline in the writing. They're still dumb by the end. They're still making the same stupid decisions. They're at this barn party and they see a person in a red coat, the person that they've been trying to find for so long. Emily sees the person appear and she just sort of stares at them without even really doing anything, which kind of annoyed me. She was just there like. Spencer and Emily go outside together and they see the person in the red coat start to walk down this country road and turn the corner, and they're like, oh my god, we have to follow them. I'm like, okay, so run, you can catch up to them in literally 2 seconds. And then this man walks up to them and they're like, hey, can we borrow your tractor? He's got like this farmer's tractor. He's like, no. They're like, please. And they have this whole conversation with him and they end up getting in the tractor anyway. It's not turning on, it's not working, it's not working. The person in the red coat comes back and starts to crawl under the hay behind the tractor, which is just ridiculous. Like, why would you do that?
One eternity later.
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
Hurry! I can't get it into first gear. Was your foot on the brake? No, it's on the clutch.
They also introduce this supernatural town called Ravenswood. I don't mind hinting at a few elements or having it in for like 1 or 2 episodes. There was too much emphasis on it. It honestly felt like they were treating the viewers like we're stupid and expecting us to just sit back and enjoy it and not point out how stupid it is. In season 5, again, I enjoyed it, but it was visibly worse than season 4. The girls adjust to a new world in season 5 where Allison is alive, and Hannah in particular seems to really struggle with that, because with Allison's return, that's when the tragic downfall of Hannah's character begins, and that's when I could never look at her the same way. Hannah goes through this emo phase. She puts black streaks in her hair. She gets an alcohol problem. She's negative. She never really came out of that dark hole she crawled into. Because she's a main character, we see her all the time. She needs to be good, and she wasn't. She was so infuriating and annoying and negative and bitchy from that season onwards, particularly in season 7, watching how every scene scene. She was like I know Mona will be snarky, right? The character of Mona was the first A. She's one of the most fascinating characters in the show. She's good, she's bad, she's mysterious, she's evil, but like in a way where you kind of root for her. She wouldn't yell the lines, she'd just say it in like a witty way, and she still had a lot of control and power and feistiness, but it was kind of controlled. Whereas with Hannah, someone would say something, anything, they'd ask her a question like, what do you think about this, Hannah? And she'd just snap out at them. Not only does she react to everything everyone says, like she hates them all, but she'll make these impulsive decisions. Even in the dollhouse episode, you could see it happening. They're all kidnapped and taken to A's dollhouse, and Hannah is the one getting up and saying into the camera, if you do anything to hurt Caleb, I'll kill you. Him, her, it, bitch. It's happened, I can think of at least 3 scenes, calling someone on the phone or having a conversation, and she'll be like, well, drive fast and hurry up. I told you, just get it done, okay? She keeps shouting her lines, and I don't know whether that's the acting. And at one point she kidnaps Noel and causes all these problems for everyone else rather than just doing stuff as a group.
It's over, bitch.
And I know she's stressed. I know she's been through trauma. I know that she doesn't like A and she wants it to be done with, but so does everyone else, but they weren't behaving like she was. And it was honestly half the time, not even her lines, but it was her tone of voice.
You didn't protect Arya, okay? I protected Arya.
Hannah.
And we are not gonna go down for this because you thought that you had to slay the dragon.
Hannah, please.
What? My mom may go down for this too. He needs to own up to what he did.
In season 5's mid-season finale, Mona is kidnapped by A, and that concept is amazing and had the potential to be so good, but the execution wasn't good. And it was that way with some of the other A reveals or kidnappings. Like the execution wasn't good, even though the idea was great. And in season 6, the girls have been rescued from the dollhouse and they have PTSD, and then later on there's a 5-year flash forward, so they're adults, which I really actually like. It's a bit of a shock, but it does bring a fresh feel, I think, and they were getting too old at that point to be stuck in high school. I kind of like season 6 because earlier in season 6 you have this whole drama with Allison realizing she had this sibling she didn't even know about, and I thought that was way creepier than the dollhouse. Ezra, for me, funnily enough, really shined in season 5 and 6 and 7 actually, because he just seemed so done with everything. I think it was the actor. I don't know what it was. He looked permanently like he just wanted to go and do something else, and I loved it. You have an A reveal halfway through season 6. It's the biggest one yet, and they made it CeCe, who's this character that's popped in and out of the show but is only a supporting character. I think they could have made it okay. It was more the fact that the acting and the directing and the script and the set and the lighting was not suspenseful. It wasn't dark and creepy and kind of gothic. It was just trash. They're going into this sci-fi futuristic technology room, which does not suit the vibe or aesthetic of Pretty Little Liars. And that's where this whole A reveal takes place. It's very bright too. It didn't look like anything scary would happen in that room. It looked safe. I'm back. I just needed to take a break for a bit because I was filming for like half an hour. Hello, nice to see you. Hope you're doing well. I know you can't respond, so I'll have to assume everything's going fine. I think a lot of people were actually really excited to find out who A was, and it was just a real shock. People on Twitter and social media were really upset about this reveal of CeCe as A. The acting was not good in that episode at all. No, like the whole way through it was just trash, and I don't even blame them. CeCe gave her backstory, which I don't really mind because I feel like you sort of understand why the person is the way they are. The girls look shocked and upset, which I understand. I understand being upset, but Mona's makeup is smudged because she's literally crying tears of pain for CeCe, which I think is ridiculous. Like, CeCe's kidnapped them, tortured them for years, locked them in a dollhouse. I didn't like season 7 in general. It started off really good after the time jump and really fresh and interesting because the girls are grown up, but then they were too quick to jump back through old hoops and get the old couples back together again rather than really giving them some time. I feel like Arya and Ezra had some good pacing and they took their time. It felt very rushed with everyone else. Hannah's engaged to someone else, but so early on, she breaks off her engagement. That whole scene is terrible, and she jumps back into it with Caleb, Toby's girlfriend Yvonne, right? They're in a serious relationship, and I feel like the writers could have just been more comfortable with that and let it end a bit more gradually. They kill off her character. So Toby is this widowed, devastated guy. It also annoyed me because Toby and Spencer were done so dirty in the final seasons. You think they've had screen time and scenes together, but then you realize that a lot of those scenes were actually Spencer's twin hooking up with Toby, and I thought those moments were between him and Spencer. So for me, it was just really disappointing to know that they weren't. And then when you look back on it, you realize they didn't even do anything together. I liked Spencer finding out that Mary Drake is her mum, and Mary Drake has an identical twin sister who's Mrs. De Laurentiis. So stuff like that was fine, but they bring in this new character called Addison, who's like the cheap Walmart knockoff version of Allison. See, their names are even similar. Allison and Addison. Addison's just like the fresh high school bully who's like a cheap replica of Allison. She's mean, she divides her friends. You'll notice a pattern because it is a pattern. Spending time on stuff that first of all isn't even entertaining, but second of all doesn't even mean anything in terms of the plot. Like Maya dying, right? I always thought A had killed Maya for some reason because Maya had some important information. Also because Mona had given Arya that riddle at Radley, and the first letter of each word spelled out Maya knew, so I thought it would all link back to A somehow, but it didn't. It had no relevance, and stuff like that carried on into season 7, which is infuriating because you're hoping it will all link together, which is how it should be. That's how it works. This is a mystery show, and I was hoping that in season 7 all the questions we had from earlier seasons would all be linked together and tied up with one big bow, but that didn't happen. Instead, you're wasting screen time with people like Addison who walk around being annoying. I just quickly wanted to give my thought on the love triangle situation that happens in season 7 and 6, I think, involving Hannah and Caleb and Spencer. Obviously, throughout the show, Caleb and Hannah have been one of the strongest power couples of the show. Him having a thing with Spencer, I didn't actually mind. I didn't like the fact that he kissed Hannah when he was still with Spencer. Also, he was mean, okay? Like, Spencer was on the phone with him. I don't think she knew he'd kissed Hannah, and she was trying to talk to him about something, and then he just hung up before she'd even finished her sentence. It also annoyed me that Hannah was flirting with Caleb and touching him in front of Spencer rather than just backing off, particularly because earlier she'd said to Spencer, I'm happy for you to date Caleb. At one point, Ren had wanted to date Hannah, and I felt like 100% they could have had something. There was a mutual chemistry there. But Hannah said to Ren, I don't want to date you because of Spencer. So it was weird to me that Spencer would go and date Caleb. I understand if it took years to really trust Mona again, but it's like they never even gave her a chance, even when she was really trying. And I wouldn't have minded if it took until season 7 for them to finally accept her and kind of be friends with her, but that never happened, and that for me made them seem really bitchy, especially in like season 7. Mona turns up at Hannah's bridal shower and she's brought her the most thoughtful gift, and Hannah is so cold. There's a different social scenario where it's like a party, and again, the girls come to Hannah and they're like, oh my god, why did you bring Mona to this event? You shouldn't have, she doesn't belong here. And by that point I was done with it because Mona to me seemed like she really was trying, and she didn't seem to have any friends, so I just felt really bad for her, and I feel like they owed her that much. Like, she'd been bullied so badly by Allison. They never went, you know what, I'm part of the reason that Mona is the way she is, maybe I should give her a chance. It all accumulated in that final episode. I know it was meant to be like a love letter to the fans, but if so, it was not. It was like the messiest breakup letter you could ever have received. They only had, what, an hour and a half? That's not long to tie everything together from 7 seasons of drama and confusion. It's a lot, and they had a lot of unanswered plot holes they should have been answering in this final episode, but instead, half of the episode is taken up with unnecessary drama that means nothing. Couples arguing, which honestly we don't need. No one asked for that. We have another ridiculous scene of Allison interacting with Addison the bully in her class, and then another scene of Addison the bully interacting with Jenna. It felt so cheap, like they were setting up for a spin-off or a reboot, so it just felt like a bunch of promo. Allison could have proposed in the last episode. Again, the whole thing was so dragged out. You're halfway through the episode and nothing has happened. Nothing! And it still annoys me now because I just remember that awful feeling of sitting there and watching it. 5 minutes is passing, 15 minutes is passing, and still nothing really of consequence has happened. And each second second, I was getting more and more anxious. They treated this AD reveal like it was a tiny, insignificant subplot. And they have all these stupid mask reveals, which for me was a way of them trying to seem like they're taking the AD reveal seriously, but actually nothing of relevance was given. Spencer steps out of the shower and Mona slaps her across the face and says, "Deja vu, bitch," which was horrendous, but I don't know why Mona did that. Maybe you guys can answer it. I'm sure it was answered, but it confused me so much. Toby and Spencer don't even really get their happy ending. All you get at the end is the girls saying, "Oh, I'm so happy Toby's sticking around." For me, it's not enough. I've sat through 7 seasons of this shit. I want a kiss. I want some extremely romantic proclamation of love. I want everything. I don't know why they did that. I thought the writers liked them as a couple, but it didn't seem like that in this final episode, especially when you find out again that Toby's moments with Spencer haven't even been moments with Spencer. They've been moments with her twin, and he didn't know that it was the twin. You don't even get Toby's reaction, realizing what's happened to him. You don't see a kiss with Toby and Spencer in that final episode. You don't see a flash forward to their honeymoon. I know I get really heated about this, but it genuinely bugs me. But it was just them playing Scrabble, which is super cute, but maybe for an earlier episode, not for the final episode of the show. We'll never see them again. We want to know they're happy. That's when you can tell that Arya and Spencer. Arya and Spencer? Oh my god, that would be a plot twist. Arya and Ezra are the show's favorites because they had this whole cute kiss thing in the beginning, and they had a whole wedding at the end. And you see her trying on her wedding dress, and you know they're going to adopt when they get back. There's a lot of seeds planted for their relationship and Easter eggs. There are 2 horrendous scenes also at the end of the finale episode, I forgot to mention, after the twin reveal's taken place, which didn't need to be there. 2 pointless scenes that should have been cut out, especially the last one. So in the first one you see that Mona has kidnapped Alex and Mary Drake, Spencer's mum. She's living in Paris, so somehow she managed to kidnap these 2 invalids and take them all the way to Paris without arousing any suspicion, and she's keeping them in like this mini dollhouse that she has. Look, I understand their intention there and what they were trying to do, because they were trying to say basically Mona's been the puppet master all along, or to have that sense of finally winning and beating the game. So I get the intention behind it, but I think there could have been a more subtle and powerful way to show that than something as over the top as kidnapping 2 people. And then even worse is the final scene you see, which is of these random girls having a sleepover in a barn kind of setting. And I understand the show is trying to bring it full circle, but it was horrendous. In the first episode of the show, you know that Alison's gone missing. The girls are sleeping in a barn, they wake up, Spencer's gone out by herself, comes back in and says, "I don't know where she is, I've looked everywhere, I thought I heard a scream," and it was iconic. And with this, they recreated the scene exactly. It wasn't like they were trying to set up a mystery for a future reboot and have it be subtle. The final shot was of Sydney Sweeney, who isn't even a character, like, oh my god. I wanted the final shot to be of the girls we know and love and care about. I wanted the final shot to be of them hugging and saying how much they loved each other. I didn't want it to be of these random girls, Addison's friends. Their acting isn't good, I'm sorry, but it's not. One of them goes out and comes in and says, "Addison's gone. I looked everywhere. I thought I heard a scream," and says the exact same words as if you would do that. It's so cheesy and horrendous, and that's the final shot of the show. That's where the show ends. Setting up for a reboot or a spin-off we don't care about, doing it in exactly the same way, with exactly the same lines, exactly the same setup. It was so cheap. Way too far into the episode, you find out that AD, the person torturing them, the person, the mastermind, is Spencer's evil British twin, a character who we never knew existed, let alone met, who we know nothing about, who we have no emotional attachment to, who for most of us it was impossible to guess. And it's the biggest cliche ever because it's the evil twin card, which is like a trope in movies. That is appalling, horrific writing. Oh Oh my god. I've got a whole section for this now because I feel like it needs and deserves a whole section. The writers didn't even have a brain. They were like sharing a brain cell and passing it amongst them. I'm going to talk now about the issue with making it a character you've never met. I've read a lot of mystery books. I've read a lot of thrillers and a lot of whodunits. PLL is one of those shows that is about that. It's a mystery, and all of the characters are mysterious, have good sides and bad sides, and they've all done stuff wrong in the past. And it's really fun because you're involved in this guessing game. You're thinking, what could their motive be? And then they make it a character we've never met. So you will re-watch Pretty Little Liars, and the villain, the main villain, only exists in like 20 minutes of the entire show, and we know nothing about them. There's no sense of betrayal. If it was Caleb or Ezra or Arya or something, yes, it would be kind of a bit of a punch in the gut and horrible, but at least it would mean that when you rewatch the show, you could see them from a different perspective and go, oh my gosh, I should have seen that. Like, it all makes sense now in retrospect. The worst part, I actually forgot about this until recently. The worst part is that they've played the evil twin card before. It's not even new. They've done this before, so it's like a double cliche because we've seen the twin thing happen. I think in like a Halloween special or one of those special episodes they do here and there was a thing with two blonde twins. You had that was enough. Then later on, you realize obviously that Spencer has this mum she didn't know was her mum who has a twin. And there's another twin too, isn't there? There's this constant twin theme. Yes, Allison and Emily have twins. Also, the girls figure out that Spencer has a twin in literally, I think, 1 or 2 minutes of conversation, maybe less. Toby says he's got a clue, something suspicious. They chat for 2 seconds and they basically say, hey, are you really saying Spencer has an evil twin? Yeah, I am. Huh. Awesome. Makes sense. Let's go. And why would Spencer's evil twin kidnap Ezra? I understand her kidnapping Spencer and wanting to talk to her, but she kidnaps Ezra too and locks him up in a cell with Spencer. Why? How does that serve her? If she wants to kill Spencer and live Spencer's life pretending to be Spencer as a possibility, right? If you're kidnapping Ezra, you would draw in so much attention to yourself and you're giving the girls an opportunity to figure out that Spencer has a twin and trace it back to you. So you're self-sabotaging and shooting yourself in the foot. It makes no sense. She didn't even have any kind of relationship or personal vendetta against Ezra. It was like he was just there. You have a huge cast. You have so many people to choose from. You have the parents, you have the girls, you have the boyfriends, you have the cops, and you choose someone we've never even met. It actually reminds me of Dexter. I've never watched that show, but I heard that it had a really bad finale because the intelligent, sociopathic mastermind Dexter ends up as a lumberjack chopping wood. It's not even just the fact that it was a twin, but it was also the way it was done, revealed, executed, the lines, the acting, the set. If you're gonna make it a twin, at least make it creepy or disturbing. It was just lame. Spencer wakes up and her twin's there and says, boo! But at least make it good for a twin reveal, you know? The fact that Spencer woke up, she was by herself, locked in this cell, and was one-on-one, face-to-face with her twin, and that's how she realized she had a twin. It would have been good if we didn't realize that Spencer had been kidnapped and was locked in a cell. The girls were chatting to Spencer, hanging out with her, going and having a sleepover, going to a party, chatting about things. Toby was talking to Spencer, and as they were talking to her, they noticed her behavior was a little bit off. This girl I'm talking to looks like Spencer, but she isn't Spencer. I think Spencer's got a twin. Something's very wrong here. That could have been interesting. And then you find out that the real Spencer is locked in a cell. It still would have been absolute garbage because we would have been pissed off it wasn't a character we knew who was the villain, but at least it would have been a bit more structurally interesting. I don't know if this is true because I've seen contrasting opinions and people saying, no, it's not true and that's just speculation. But I heard that the writers originally wanted to make the final A Ren, who's a character we've seen in like episode 1 of the first season. So that would have been great because at least we know who he is, and he could have been very creepy, I think. That would have been great. But then apparently the actor was busy and couldn't make it work with his schedule. But that is so lame if that's the case. Like, if that's true and they just couldn't do it because he was busy, then don't make it a character like a twin. Go, never mind, Ren can't do it, but Arya can do it. One of the parents can do it. Allison can do it. At least it could have seemed like they put a bit of effort in if they thought back to earlier seasons and stuff that happened in earlier seasons involving the previous A, drama, accidents, and they thought, hey, in this final season, first of all, let's answer the questions and plot holes, but also let's kind of tie it back into some earlier incidents. For instance, we know in like season 3, Malcolm, Ezra's potential son, is kidnapped by A, and people think Spencer took him or something, and there's a whole drama around that. What if you revealed in this final episode that actually it was Spencer's twin that had kidnapped Malcolm all the way back in season 3? It really seems like AD wasn't planned since the beginning because it shows, it appears that way. And also the British accent, hearing her be like, but Jenna, and she fell off the hoodie. Hello, sister. That is such a classic Spencer move.
I know you loved your sister, but
No,
this
those
is...
bitches took her away from me. And now they're getting everything that they deserve. I'm honouring her, don't you get that?
It was also the British accent, which didn't make her seem scary. It made her seem quite friendly, actually. It was also the fact that they made her appear very almost giggly and innocent and immature, proud of herself when she did something right. She just seemed like a child, and it made it hard for me to be scared of her. Also, it's the way that the girls find out that Spencer has a twin that's bad. Again, there were better ways they could have done it, but instead, you see Spencer's twin hanging out with a horse, who's Spencer's horse. The horse knows it's not Spencer, so it reacts badly. Ridiculous, like a horse is the one to figure it out, come on. And later on, she's talking to Jenna. Jenna's blind. Jenna senses that something's off. Maybe she smells differently or something, I don't know. Jenna calls up Toby and is like, Toby, you may not believe this, but I don't think Spencer's Spencer. Why would Jenna help them? She doesn't even like them. Every cliche possible is there. Even when you have Spencer and her twin fighting, the girls arrive and the boyfriends arrive trying to help break up the fight, and then they can't tell which twin is which because Spencer's saying, I'm Spencer, and her twin is saying, no, I'm Spencer, and they're trying to figure out which one's which. Again, such a cliche. The only part I actually genuinely liked was Ren's actor. Every scene he had with Spencer's twin was just so awkward. She wants him to shoot her so she can have a scar in the same spot that Spencer has a scar. By the way, I still don't know who shot Spencer. I'm not clear on that. But she says to him, you need to shoot me. And rather than him like just staring at her, yelling at her, saying you're crazy, anything, he goes, Alex! Oh, come on! And it's so funny. He just doesn't seem that bothered.
Oh, come on, Alex!
And everyone just has closure and moves on. And there's no more discussion around it anymore or processing it and thinking about it. It's just, okay, it's done. We figured out who it was. Let's go live our lives. And they just accept the fact that Spencer had a twin. Now we've talked about the finale and the AD reveal, I just want to talk about some key points I have in terms of analysis around the show and my thoughts on weaknesses with it. So one thing I want to talk about is how Allison was done so dirty. I've mentioned that before, but I just want to go a little bit deeper into it. Allison at the beginning of the show is the girl that's gone missing. She's the queen bee, she's a bully, she's manipulative, she's horrible, she's conniving, and she's a great character. Almost this mysterious entity, this fearsome thing. Everyone is scared of her. She's like this ghost. You only see her in flashbacks, and it makes her seem even more alluring and mysterious because you don't know everything about her, and I kind of liked that, and it would have been better if she was either A or she just stayed dead. When she comes back even, she's kind of scary, and the girls are really back and forth as to whether or not they can trust her, and Allison has many moments where she's regressing and being really mean again, and so it's kind of badass. You're like, oh, can we trust her? Can we not? But instead she just turned nice. Also, she was gone for like years, and I was so unclear as to what she was actually doing with her spare time, where she was living, who she was talking to, how she wasn't being caught. It just felt like this big empty void, this gap that was never filled in. There was a very cringy but still interesting deleted scene of Allison in jail thinking about the way she treated Mona, and almost like this parallel scenario. What would it have been like if that one time I was mean to her, instead I was nice to her and took her out shopping? How would her life and my life be different? And the scene was very poorly done and cringy. The Allison before would never have allowed herself to be manipulated by Charlotte and Dr. Rollins. One of the biggest reasons that it was bad wasn't just because she turned nice in the first place, but it was that she lost all her badass qualities. Honestly, they did a better job with Byron's redemption arc in like season 1, after after he cheats on Ella, because at least it seems like he really cares and he's trying really hard to make it up to her. The girls don't get any smarter. They stay pretty consistently stupid throughout the seasons, which is annoying, especially after the time jump. They should be smarter as they've gotten older. They shouldn't be jumping to as many conclusions, but they were still doing it too much. Like in season 1, the girls hand in Ian's trophy with blood on it to the police, and they're not sure whether it's linked to Alison's murder or not, really, but they keep saying stuff like, Alison can rest in peace now, and I can't believe Ian did this, I can't believe Ian killed her, and they're way too confident with it. And by season 7, they're still being a bit too hasty, like accusing Ezra of killing Charlotte and assuming Lucas is up to something and now Jenna's up to something. I want to emphasize that I really do love this show. I adore it, it's amazing, but it did irritate me when they kept jumping to conclusions. Oh my gosh, did Alison kill Charlotte? Is Alison A? And they're really hardcore set in that belief. Like in season 1, they need to get rid of Jenna's files, and so they just throw them in the river, which is ridiculous because the files aren't shredded. They'll just drift down the river onto the riverbank, dry up, and they'll be perfectly readable, or someone could scoop them out of the river and read them. A hits Hannah with a car, or someone hits Hannah with a car, it looks like A, and then Hannah's sat in the hospital and she says Noel Kahn is A. Assumes that because she saw someone write I see you on the back of Ezra and Aria's window, and I think she knew that it was Noel that had done that. But it was so weird that then she'd assume that he was A, because that's a very big statement to make. And you know, he had just seen a teacher making out with a student, so crazy guess I know, but maybe Noel was just trying to scare them because he was worried about Aria's well-being dating a teacher. That doesn't mean he's A, that means he just saw something inappropriate happening and did what a lot of teenage boys would do, which is trying to scare them by writing something on the back of the car. Obviously, this is a show that has a lot of themes of female friendship. Is the friendship actually good? Because one of the biggest issues I have with shows like the Winx saga is it feels like they're trying to pit the girls against each other and no one can relate to each other in a genuine way. It's all very superficial and snarky. But in this show, I do really like the female friendship, and I think it's a big strength of the show. But there are a few moments where it's not great. For instance, the whole Hannah and Spencer thing dealing with Caleb wasn't the most mature. One of the worst parts is in season 7 when Aria betrays her friends to go and work for A to save Ezra. She's being completely selfish because A has blackmailed all of them, but yet Aria feels like her situation is more important, so she should go behind the girls' backs and do horrible things. This is one of the worst things actually. I think it's in season 5 when Aria backstabs Hannah by not believing her that Zach was harassing her and coming onto her. And Zach is a much older guy who's dating Ella, and Aria doesn't believe her, has this awful tone of voice, and she starts saying stuff like, were you trashed? Did you kiss him? What did you do, Hannah? Did you invite him into your car? Even though she kind of apologized afterwards, I could never look at Aria in the same way, and it was very mediocre. When the girls are being bitchy and catty, they do tend to, most of the time, apologize to each other and say they're sorry pretty early on. Hannah really supports Emily coming out and tries to make her feel really comfortable. Particularly for me, I loved the conversations between Spencer and Aria. I've got a lot of thoughts about the show. I think they definitely messed up with the A reveals, particularly when someone like Ezra would have been a really good A, Mike would have been a better A, Mrs. De Laurentiis, one of the parents, anyone. So they messed up big time with that and should be completely ashamed of themselves because there is no excuse. They had so many good options and they butchered it. Pretty Little Liars did waste the fans' loyalty and time, but I think you would stick with the show to enjoy the friendship between the girls and the conversations, and not so much for the actual main plot of A, because that's often the weakest part of the show. It was one of the first shows to do that idea of cyberbullies and being blackmailed online, and the cast and the creators' willingness to interact with their fans on social media and put out clues and have the fans try to guess, I think was really cool, and there was this lovely online community created because of that. They used the internet to interact with their fans. I do think though that because they had so much communication and this parasocial relationship with the fans, it was great, but it also had some issues because it led to some fans feeling a sense of entitlement over the show. Sasha, who plays Alison, opened up about how people were being so mean towards her character and nasty simply because she'd gained weight. And also the girl who played Paige was bullied horrendously over her character, to a breaking point. Like, people were so mean. Now, I hate the character of Paige. I think she's a shit character. She has no connection with Emily. She's boring. But the actress who plays Paige seems lovely, and she is not responsible for the travesty that was her character. She was just taking an opportunity as an actress and went with it. She did nothing wrong, and that's horrible, and it really affected her. An actor is not the same as the character they play. I know this is a long video. Not all my videos are this long, but if it's like a TV show or something, I want to do a deep dive and I want to cover everything. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe, click the bell and then all, so you get all notifications, and it means that you can see each video. And I'm really excited to do more videos for you guys. Also, if you like content like this in this kind of form and structure, let me know, because I really enjoy it. And I will see you guys for my next one.